right. Check, check, check. 1, 3. Yeah, you thought I would say 2, right? Anyway, hello. Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? Is there anybody out there? Let me know in the comments so I can figure out what's happening. Also, give me like 10 seconds because, of course, chat is delayed by 10 seconds for reasons that we don't know and don't care about. So yeah, let me know if you can hear me. We will see. Hooray! Hello, Ori. How are you doing? Welcome to this Saturday evening, where I decided to. Well, I thought about taking down my towel, which is still drying on my bed, and then I forgot to do it because times and stuff and brains are not necessarily in sync. Anyway, it's a Saturday evening. I'm doing the live stream 1 week early because next weekend I'll be at a festival that some friends and are organizing, and I'm going to help out at probably merch sales and stuff like that. So we'll be complaining about the universe tonight, and to get into like a proper complaining mood, I brought myself a beer. So grab yourself a drink, and well, cheers, everybody. So yeah, wonderful. Ori, how are you? Since you're the only person here in chat so far, how are you doing today? I hope you had a good week and you got some cool things done, despite the world being the world at the moment. So I hope that's good. What are you reading at the moment? I guess that's a good question to ask. Hey Joe, how you doing, man? I've been following your Twitter activities. It seems you're currently finishing the next Hybrid Helix book, or like finishing editing, I guess. So how are you doing, man? Look, Ori, this is called monthly Marxist Malcontent. Complaining about the 1% is basically all I do, right? The Path of Thorns. You talked about that, and then I forgot about it. How are you liking Six Lives so far? I did enjoy it. I did very much enjoy like all the weird references to all kinds of other stuff during the book. So it's the kind of book I like because it makes me feel smart, and I like to feel smart. Despite everything else I say, I like to feel smart. Hmm. Interesting. I that you say that about the lighting because I don't think I've changed. I haven't changed anything. It's the same light I always use, which is like obviously not a proper ring light because I do have one. I just haven't figured out how to install it in a proper way. This is like one of those weird lamps that I have. It's supposed to be like proper, like it's an electric light that's supposed to simulate sunlight, which someone back in years and years and years ago who was complaining that I was spending too much time at my desk and not going outside thought that I would benefit from proper, high, you know, whatever brightness sunlight. Sunlight simulation light would profit benefit from that, and they made me buy this lamp, and then I didn't use it forever because I'm still me. And then I realized that I can probably use it for like streaming and recording videos and shit because it's very bright, as you say. But I don't think it's different from like any other day because I didn't change anything. Yeah, the first chapter is definitely what you might call poopy. That's that's kind of the point, though. What I found really interesting is that he takes time out for like the whole like going to like the pub and drinking and eating and stuff, and it reminded me a lot of like the Diaries of Samuel Pepys, which is something you should never read unless you really want to find out how much meat and alcohol a 17th century civil servant can actually consume in 1 week. And the answer is a lot. Yeah, maybe it's the camera adjusting because as I said, I didn't change anything. It's just like the usual setup. Interesting. So yeah, but yeah, it's as I said, it's the same light and the same camera, and it's all in the same position as always. So I don't know. It's technology doing technology things. Probably someone has decided to add like an AI filter or something, and they call it AI filter in there somewhere, and that's what we have to live with now. I don't know. That's actually true, Ori. That's very true. But like, I did read the Diaries of Samuel Pepys for reasons that we don't want to get into too much, and it's really interesting. Um, on that level, like the amount of like food and stuff they consume was really interesting. One thing I learned there, which obviously, Six Lives takes place in like the 1850s, not the 1650s and 1660s, but one thing I found really interesting with the Diaries of Samuel Pepys was that what they did was go and buy like I don't know, a chicken or a goose or a duck or whatever, like buy meat on the market and then go to a pub and hand over the meat they bought to the cook. And the cook would then prepare it for them in a pub, and they just like buy, I don't know, 5 liters of beer and consume it to the food that was prepared for them in the place. But they bought the meat on the market, which is one of those like neat details that if you ever write like a historical fiction or whatever, add that bit and it feels like you're doing like actual like real interesting world building when all you did is just like either read Diary of Samuel Pepys or listen to me talk about the Diaries of Samuel Pepys, or possibly read, of course, the Baroque cycle by Neil Stevenson, which has Samuel Pepys come up as a character in there at some point. The other part, of course, with the Diary of Samuel Pepys, which I found really interesting, is of course that he's you know it's like a very detailed first-hand account of both the Great Fire of London and the Black Plague, the bubonic plague hitting the Black Death hitting London in 1665. So you have both of those written as like his diary. I mean, it's literally his diary, and then someone decided to actually publish it later. But so you have both of those things described by someone who was there, and that's like it's really interesting to have someone describe the Great Fire of London as an eyewitness whose house did not get burnt down, but almost got burnt down, and how they got, evacuated, and how the whole thing like rages for like 3 days. So he has like three entrances on like in his diary on like how the city is burning, which is really interesting to read in that regard. So yeah, if you like diaries, read the Diary of, of Samuel Pepys. It's also very much about like him committing adultery all the time, and also committing a lot of like what you would definitely call rape nowadays, and apparently was totally fine back then because he writes about it. And it's yeah, it's certainly a thing. Hey Ben, glad you can make it. How are you doing? Haven't seen you anywhere in a long time, so I hope you're good. I mean, I know you've been playing Dragon Age, so there's that. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thing, right, Joe? That the idea of having a kitchen in your home, when you look at like what modern day kitchens need, you need electricity in this case, you need like a water pump, you need all these things that we have like nowadays. But like, yeah, why would anyone in like 17th century London have both like actual flowing water in their homes and all the other stuff? So of course you don't have that. So yeah, having like dedicated places like kitchens, street carts or whatever to sell stuff on the street is makes a lot of sense, because it is the kind of infrastructure that not everyone has at the time. So yeah, it makes sense, but it's one of those things that we don't really think about because we just assume that the world works like whatever. um And I feel it's like one of those things that is really interesting to use those small details to make a world feel like when you do like world building, whether you're writing a novel or whether you're doing like tabletop role playing game writing or running a game or whatever. It's those like small details that make that signal that you're like in a different place. And you don't even have to actually be like super inventive. You just like have to look at history and just like take some of the assumptions that we have about our world, like those unwritten, unspoken assumptions, and take just like some of those and just like actually look at them and like, well, probably not. And then just like suddenly you're not in Kansas anymore. Not necessarily because Kansas doesn't have, indoor plumbing or whatever. I wouldn't know. I've never been there. Somehow I doubt there was like flowing water and cold water and hot water in Dorothy's house in Kansas in like 1900 or whatever. That is good, Ben. Free of chores and beer at the ready sounds really good. Yeah, yeah, I get what you mean there, Joe. It feels unrealistic, but then yeah, it's because we're using our assumptions. Like obviously, fast food is bad, so medieval people didn't do that. They only had like cheese and bread, and that's all everyone ever ate in medieval times, unless you're in Westeros when you eat like five, six, seven kind of layers of meat every day. Because George R. Martin really loves to describe food, apparently. Yeah, free of chores sounds good. Like I've been um yeah, I'm glad I'm like awake and everything today because yesterday I helped my sister move. She moved to like a different city and well, also to a different country to be fair. And so I spent yesterday first packing stuff into a van, then driving to a different city, taking stuff out of the van, then taking like a 4-hour train ride, and then turns out there was a release party for like a German rap group in the city that I needed to change trains, and it was organized by people that I know who play in a heavy metal band, and other people showed up, and they're like, "Hey, you're changing trains there anyway. Why don't you go to this release party as well?" So that's what I did, and then I came home at like I don't know 3 a.m. and then I realized that I had like two muffins for breakfast, and that's all I ate yesterday. Yeah. So the fact that I'm still alive and that I'm still, moderately awake is a bit of a miracle today. But I did reread Scissors Cut Paper Wrap Stone by Ian MacDonald yesterday, so there's that, and it's a wonderful book, and we'll see if how many people have actually. I mean, I know Liam has read it, but the whole like Ian MacDonald thing that I'm currently doing is so interesting because those might be the least successful videos I've ever done, which is so crazy to me because like we're talking about Ian MacDonald, right? He's been around for like the last 35 years in science fiction publishing. He's won like tons of awards and everything, and no one has ever read him, at least not on BookTube. And then there's suddenly someone going like, "Wow, someone is actually talking about this guy. I never knew that people would actually read him." And it's like, yeah, I feel the same. So there's certainly that sort of like I don't want to call it like I don't know. It's a weird experience, and I really hope that maybe um, my videos will lead some other people to try out some Ian McDonald. Hopefully that will be cool. Uh, I know that Chadia has started or is currently reading Desolation Road, which makes me very happy because it's such a wonderful book, and I wish more people would read it. Yeah. So wait a second. Chat has been doing weird shit. Hey, Chadya, there you are. Speak of the devil and everything, right? Not that I would ever call you a devil, you know. Yeah, so it's just like one of those really interesting things where I'm like, there's this like huge blind spots in like online book discourse, and it's not just like Ian MacDonald. There's a bunch of authors where like when you go to like different places, like I don't know, like fantasy conventions or whatever, and you talk, and everyone has read this specific author, and then you go to BookTube or BookTok or whatever, and suddenly no one has ever heard of them, and I'm like, the idea that like you have these like sort of like communities that are super insular and never talk to anyone outside of that specific community is something that I'm trying to sort of like wrap my head around and realize, and like, right, it's like me talking about Ian MacDonald on BookTube is apparently weird, but like if I would go to ICFA and talk about Ian MacDonald, everyone, including Ian MacDonald, who's apparently often at ICFA to talk about stuff, would go like, "Well, why are you talking about this guy? We always talk about this guy. There's nothing new to this." And then it's just like interesting to see how these sort of like insular communities sort of create like a form of reality where like even if you switch between like say BookTube and BookTok, right? There's people on BookTok that talk about authors that no one on BookTube has ever heard about, and the other way around. And I think it's interesting to see how we build sort of like these realities around our very specific small bubbles. And I hate the word bubble and echo chamber because it's used for like all these like like all these like dumb excuses, but there are certainly situations where you can realize that yes, there's a reality behind that. We just need to be aware of it and not blame it for the wrong things, but be aware of the fact that it kind of does exist. I really need to figure this out because the chat thing is moving weirdly. Um, oh, you have no idea. It's going to go all over so many other places, Chadia. It's weird. Have you reached? Wait, you're currently in the whole like billiard pool kind of plot line, right? That's somewhere in the 30s, right? When whatever his name is, the Mandela son goes and becomes like a billiard player, and his sister becomes very mystical and meets Saint Cathy of the Catherine's Wheel. Oh, you got your ordered the final Black Company. I'm so glad, Ben. I'm also like every time you read those books and you talk to me about those books, I'm like, yeah, finally someone's getting it. You know, it's so wonderful. Black Company is so yeah. It's just like so good, and it always annoys me when people go and read it and dismiss it at just like some like Daniel Green made this like it's the darkest thing ever, and it's like, oh boy, my sweet summer child. But um kind of missing the point. And I think it was like Andy Smith going like, well, I read this book and I didn't like it because it didn't have the same prose as Malaz, and so it's clearly bad. And I'm like, I don't think you understood what was going on there. And I don't want to, tell people how to read books, but clearly if you read this as like, well, Stephen Erickson told me that it's like an inspiration from Malaz, and so I expect the same thing as Malaz, and you're misunderstanding the idea of inspiration in a lot of ways. So I'm always glad when people read Black Company and kind of get that it's like such an emotional kind of story in a lot of ways. And that Glenn Cook is managing that wonderful thing, which is like write a book for dudes and still make it all about like emotions and like love and stuff, and manage to sell that to very toxically masculine dudes like me. And I think that's like an achievement that is often undervalued, I guess, or underappreciated. Hey, biggest, cheers. Yeah, the part the industrial feudalism thing is so good, right? With Johnny Starling becoming the shareholder of Oris of the Oris Railway Corporation. It's so funny because it's it's clearly like a very clear like criticism of all things capitalist, but it's also just like so funny. In it has this, yeah, very interesting vibe. And I think what makes like Desolation Road in particular so interesting to me is like that's like Ian McDonald's debut novel, right? That's his first novel. He goes places with that one. He just like it's a very interesting, very brave book, in very daring book, in that it just like doesn't give a fuck about any kind of conventions whatsoever. And there's a bunch of like debut novels that do that, but like Desolation Road is definitely one of those books that like just like, showcases that there are no like limitations within like genre fiction if you know just like go ahead. And that's something I really appreciate about it. And yes, Ian McDonald is definitely one of my favorite authors, in that he is so varied. Like I've right like I'm currently going through all of his books. I had read a bunch of his books before. I had read Desolation Road before. I have read King of Morning, Queen of Day before, of course, which I loved, and I had read Scissors Cut Paper Wrap Stone before, and I obviously had read Brazil, River of God, The Dervish House, which is really interesting, and obviously Hopeland, and something else that I just can't remember right now. And those I had read before, and like what I'm discovering right now when I sort of like filling out the gaps that I hadn't looked at before, is like how incredibly sort of like varied in like his topics and style MacDonald is, right? He does like his magical realism thing with Desolation Road, and then when you go to like Out on Blue Six, which he hates, it's like it's like Snow Crash but on steroids, and even worse. And it's beautiful in like how just completely pretentiously over the top it is in that regard. And I appreciate that. I kind of get why McDonald is not exactly happy with it afterwards. And yeah, like I agree with his assessment that he was trying too hard. He's definitely trying too hard, but I think it's important to see, because he takes a lot of like stuff that kind of shows up in later books all over, when he kind of sort of like takes these all of the things that he crams into Out on Blue Six, and he just like takes them and makes like a book about each of these concerns in specifically, and just doesn't focus, so like just like try to do everything at once. And then you come to like something like King of Morning, Queen of Day, where he switches style within the book between like the diary letter 19th century, late 19th century, early 20th century start of stuff of the first part, and then he switches to like a James Joyce kind of style in the second part, and then he goes like full cyberpunk in the third one with hunting fairies with like samurai swords. And there's just like always so much going on, and he's like apparently able to just like switch style and everything between books, and that's just like very impressive. And at the same time, he's always, like from the first book onwards, like always tried like he's got like a very clear sort of like moral backbone fiber, in a way that I very generally appreciate with authors, where you can tell that they have like they have like values, and those values inform what they're writing. And with McDonald, it is very clearly stuff like, having a having a problem with colonialism, and having a problem with imperialism and stuff like that, and the way that he always sort of like sets his books in places that your average white Anglo-American guy, in this case, like obviously he's Scottish, raised in Ireland, Northern Ireland, but um, he goes out of his way to not make his books about old white guys, which is obviously sort of like, was very much revolutionary back in the 90s when he was writing a lot of these books. And to have like, the chaga series that I'm going to read next, which is set in Africa and does deal with like a lot of like stuff that post-colonial Africa has to deal with, including like the HIV epidemic and all these other things. And he takes that and writes a book about it. And you have something like The Broken Land, which is both about Northern Ireland and Ireland, and also about Africa at the same time, and going places and trying to actually say something and do something and change the world by writing is something that I really appreciate. And MacDonald certainly does that. And like, when he wrote these like three books that are sort of his early 2000s stuff, when he took River of Gods and set it in Africa, set it in India, and then Brazil, which is obviously set in Brazil, and the Dervish House, which is set in Turkey, looking at like these different countries, going like, well, what might those places be like in, I don't know, 50 years time or whatever, and engaging with the fact that the world is not just Western Europe, England, and the US, but all these other places, I think is something that I really appreciate about MacDonald and how he does these things. And yeah, so yeah, he's definitely one of my favorite authors, because no matter what he does, I always go away after the book and go like, wow, I've learned something. I've certainly changed my way of thinking after reading this book in a lot of ways, and that's good. Yeah, it is very much a military soap opera, and you're right there. It's just like so. Yeah, you care about the people, right? It's like they're out there and they're constantly like doing the war shit, and then you're like, well, but what I really want to know is like how Croker and Lady are getting on. It's like, that's clearly what I need to know, is like how they're solving their personal problems. Like, I don't care about the war. And to manage that and still sell it as military fantasy, I think is like a really big achievement for Glenn Cook, and I do appreciate that. Hey there, Jay Palmer. Hey there, how you doing? Sorry, I'm just slowly going through chat and stuff. I don't know which book you mean, Chadia. I assume Black Company, because that's the only. Or are you talking about King of Morning, Queen of Day? I mean, you should read both, but and I know you started both, so I'm kind of confused there. But yeah, so yeah, that's one of the things. Ian MacDonald. Read more Ian MacDonald. He's worth it, and it's like interesting to see how you have these kind of authors that kind of completely fall by the wayside when it comes to stuff like BookTube, because everyone is too busy, I don't know, reading Hyperion, I guess. But we're not going there today. Another thing that I found interesting is like, I did that like video on Snow Crash like 3 days ago, and I put it up yesterday. And what I found interesting is that it ended up being very different from what I thought I would talk about when I, reread the book again. And I'm very happy with what I said. I find it interesting that, I thought Snow Crash would do much better as a video, but apparently, what I found interesting is that there's a lot of stuff. I love this book, right? I've read it so many times. I've read Snow Crash like, I guess, around 10 times by now, and there's parts in there that I kind of know by heart, and I really enjoy reading it. It's fun going back, and I'm like, I know all the fun bits and I all the jokes and everything, and it works really well. And then just like standing back and going like, well, but what what does it actually say about myself that I like this, and what's actually behind it was like a very sobering experience. And I hope I'll still be able to enjoy it when I read it the next time, because I did in fact I bought that book, so I'm gonna read it again and again and again to get money out of it and like get my worth out of it. I have read Magic. I did enjoy Ship of Magic is the first one, right? And the second one is the Mad Ship, and the third one is Ship of Destiny, I think. I'm just not like I always confuse the names for like the Life Ship Traders series, and I did read them a long time ago. I did enjoy them a lot. There's something happening in Ship of Destiny that I don't know how I feel about it now. It's certainly stuck in my memory. I will have to reread them at some point to see what I feel about them now. But yeah, Life Ship Traders definitely an incredibly good series. It does a lot of stuff really well. And I think like Kyle, um, I know everyone who reads Life Ship Traders hates Kyle, and I get it. But I think Kyle is one of the best depictions or explorations of what toxic masculinity actually means. And the fact that everyone hates him is interesting because I feel bad for that guy, right? He's clearly an asshole and he's behaving terribly. He's causing a lot of harm, but he's not doing that because he wants to be a bad guy, right? He's clearly trying his best within like the very specific like frame of reference that he has. And I feel like a lot of people just like going like, I hate this guy, lack sort of like the empathy or the empathy, maybe also the self-reflection to understand how much they might sort of like be part of a system that turns people into Kyles, I guess. And and that's like one of the things I really appreciated about what Robin Hobb did with Live Ship Traders is like take Kyle and make us, well, maybe some of us understand that yeah, we're part of the system that turns people into Kyle, and we should maybe reflect on that. But it's much easier to just go like, I hate this character. Sorry, Chad. Yeah, it's like, yeah. Um, I hope you'll continue both of them because I think they're both worth reading. But yeah, take your time. I mean, you haven't finished Blackheart Man either, right? You just like switched over to Skin Folk, that's the name, and Nana Hopkinson's short stories instead, which is also good, and more people need to read Nana Hopkinson. Um, that's like the other thing, right? Like at this point, I feel like I'm the guy that constantly tells people to read books that they've never heard about before, and then I feel bad about it because I'm like, what? Does this make me sound arrogant when I'm going like, well, you haven't read this book yet, have you? And it's like, no, I just don't want you to read cool books, I guess. But yeah, so anyway, like Snow Crash, interesting reading experience to go back and read it again because yeah, as I said, it's certainly been like a formative book for me, and I was trying to figure out why this may be not so good. Yeah, yeah, Chad. Yeah, I know what you mean, and yeah, the other one, and yes, Ida, you're right. Like Kyle's a dick. Don't get me wrong, he's a dick, but it's important to understand where that kind of thing comes from, and like how it can turn you into that kind of person. Yeah, yeah, I can I can see that, Chad. Yeah, like at least some of Ian McDonald, I guess. Once again, as I said, like he's all over the place, like stylistically and whatnot. I just the thing with with Blackheart Man in particular is like I found it really good. I really enjoyed it, but it was also like very much like because he is way too close to how I like who I am. It was like very clearly like a thing where I'm like, fuck, I would do the same thing as Vikosi, and like from like a distance, standing next to it, and like reading it, like with that like distance that you have as a reader, I'm like, that's a really stupid idea. And then I go back and I was like, well, oh, yeah, I probably would have done the same thing or like something similar in that situation. So it was like maybe it was that it kind of really hit hard for me where I'm like, yeah, fuck, that's me. She got me bang to rights there. So that was like really interesting, and I did really enjoy her the Salt Roads, which is well really dark. But yeah, I think like maybe that's like one of the reasons why I really like connected so well with Blackheart Man was that yeah, it was like it was a journey of self discovery, I guess. Also, it's got a camel that likes to drink beer, and I personally feel seen in that regard as well. Um, but like the other thing that I found interesting with Blackheart Man, beyond like all the stuff I said in the video, is like what I really enjoyed is like it's an incredibly fast paced book, right? It's constantly something's happening and chaos and stuff like that, and then the book is over and you're like, holy shit, there's also like all this world building going on and all these like deep themes and stuff, and it's like almost missed it because of like all the constant explosions and shit. And to manage to pack all of that, it's not a long book, right? The audiobook is like 12 hours something, so that's probably like maybe 400 pages, something like that. That's the length of like a Drizzt Do'Urden novel by R.A. Salvatore, and if you compare those two, it's like the amount of stuff that Nala Hopkinson packs into like those 400 pages. It's just absolutely impressive in that regard. Oh no, Charya. I felt the need to slap Vikosi as well, but that's the point. It's like if I look back at like all the things I've done over the years, there's a lot of situations where I would have definitely needed some slapping. Don't get me wrong. So it's like he's terrible, but he's terrible in a way that I'm terrible as well, and that's sort of like what made it interesting to me. Is like it it leads me to go and think about like how I approach life and how I deal with things, and that's valuable for me. And that's like one of the reasons why I like reading books, right? Is, you know, that it allows me to sort of like figure out other people, or well, not figure out other people, like empathize with other people, but also try to figure out who I am and maybe become a better person in the process. And that's the value of reading like all kinds of fiction, which is why read, right? Which is a question that some booktubers ask other booktubers, and some booktubers who ask those questions, message people like me and then ghost me after I say, yes, of course I will come on your live stream, which is, something that happens, or so I've heard. But yeah, that's like one of the reasons that make like reading something like Blackheart Man so interesting to me, was like leading me to sort of examine how I interact with other people, how I try to do things on my own when I should probably ask for help, or defer to other people's experience and like expertise, and don't do that because I'm a terrible smartass and I feel like I know everything, or not necessarily know everything, but certainly there's an impulse there where I pretend to know everything, and that's obviously because I'm a white dude growing up in like the 90s, mostly in the early 2000s, where being a white dude kind of gave you certainly that security of like knowing everything, or sort of being the baseline expertise for everything, right? And then I went into to university and learned and studied a lot, and it's like I may not be very smart, but I'm certainly well educated. So that does give me a lot of like, an edge in like a lot of conversations about stuff, because I'm like, yeah, I do know shit, but that doesn't mean I know everything. And having that sort of like reflected back at me with some like Vikosi, who does know a lot of things, right? He's clearly a smart kind of character. He knows a lot of stuff. He's an expert in a lot of things, but he's very much overvaluing the expertise he has. And that's something that I do need constant reminding of that, because otherwise I kind of go off into weird places. So I really, really appreciated that, I guess. The beer I'm drinking is a Munchhof. I think it's what they call Keller beer, which is an unfiltered beer. Um, yeah, I just it's a that's not even like a local brewery. It's like a I don't know 200 kilometers from where I live, and it's yeah, it's an unfiltered pilsner, I guess, sort of pilsner, slightly less bitter than your average pilsner. Is the Mannshof Keller. They do like a really good like dark beer as well, but my local store doesn't carry that one, so I would have to go to a different store to get it. I used to get it when I lived like in a different place, and the local store there had it, so that's kind of how I got into that. And I just like appreciate like the pop off bottle tops. I just really appreciate those, because you can put them back on so your beer doesn't go stale, and if you accidentally knock over your beer, it doesn't spill. So it's a very, very good like way of closing bottles, I guess. You may laugh, biggest, but like I think during like when I did the videos on Dan Simmons, I bought a box of beers, and for reasons that are difficult to explain, and I mean, what not difficult to explain, like for some reason, half of the box was alcohol-free beers, because someone like kind of mixed up the bottles in the box, and I just like took the box, and I was there with a friend. He's like, "Well, this is this brand." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm taking those, and we're good." Turns out like half of those were alcohol-free beers, which means that like a lot of those Dan Simmons videos were definitely recorded sober, which don't blame the fact that I did not like those books on the fact that I was sober. I think it only makes my judgment even more relevant, I guess. But that's like one of those interesting things, right? Like when I do videos, and um, when I do like start a video, and then I realize it doesn't work, and I have to re-record the video, because obviously I can't do proper editing and shit. Um, that does have an impact. If I had if I record a video 3 times in one day, that means the third one is recorded after having 2 beers already, and that does impact how I talk. That does impact how I perform in front of a camera. So there is an issue there. So it would probably be smart to get like alcohol-free beers for videos to make sure that I'm on point and everything. But you know, I'm not good at like thinking these things through anyway. So that's for whatever reason the chat is really not working. By which I mean like my screen that just like jumps all around all over the place, and it kind of makes it difficult to read comments. Let me see if I can fix that, because it's absolutely fucking annoying. we don't want to do that, right? All right, let's see how that works. I'm doing something really stupid, I guess. But then, you know, who am I to complain about anything? Sorry about that. But yeah, if it forces me to do something because I can't read the chat, then I guess I have to do that. I'm all right. I just moved. I opened my own stream on YouTube so I can, you know, read the chat there. Now that's something. Also means that I have like another viewer, and isn't that great? That's how you actually grind set engagement, right? Guess I'll become a grind tuber after all. Hey, also, how you doing, man? Yeah, but that's like the thing, right? With the beers, like I started that when I started the channel because I definitely had like an issue of being too scared to record or anything, and I had a couple of beers, and I saw that challenge that Iscarp did back then on like, hey, try to do like a spoiler-free synopsis of the Malazan Book of the Fall, and I had like 3 beers, and I'm like, I'm gonna record, and I'm gonna drink a beer while recording, so I have something to do with my hands and stuff, and now I'm kind of stuck with it because there is such a thing as branding, right? I have not made a video while being stoned. No. The main reason there is, of course, that until April 1st of this year, smoking weed was illegal in Germany, which means that recording myself smoking weed or anything of the sorts would be illegal under YouTube's TOS. Now I can probably smoke a joint on screen and it will be fine. So this may happen in the future. It may happen in the future, but I'm not that much of a smoker of weed in general, so the main issue is if I record while stoned, I would probably have to sort of like check the video to make sure that I didn't say anything really stupid. And I really hate re-listening to my voice and rewatching my own videos, so I don't know if I want to do that. So that's something I kind of need to figure out. But so here's the thing: like, once I make that fucking conspiracy fucking video, that conspiracy fiction video that I'm working on, and I've been working on way too long, and I need to finally start recording it. If I do it the way it kind of works in my head, there will be a part where I will smoke weed on screen. We'll just, you know, I just have to actually get my shit together and start recording it. But that might just happen at some point. Hopefully very soon, because after that, I need to get back to the Sanderson thing. And I need to do the Sanderson thing because, Wind and Truth comes out on December 6th. Which means people who are not in the Netherlands need to get really big stockings because otherwise that book won't fit in, and people in the Netherlands are fucked because Santa Claus comes, not Santa Claus, but like Saint Nicholas comes to them on the 5th when the book is not yet out. So Germans are lucky; they can get a Brandon Sanderson book in their stockings on the 6th of December. And Americans are generally fucked because they don't believe in Saint Nicholas. They only have Santa Claus because of, I don't know, reasons, I guess. Wait, you have recorded videos, Ben, while stoned? I mean, videos, period. Yeah, yeah, that's the thing, right? It's like with like recording or doing videos or anything of the sort, I want to know what I'm doing. I want to have sort of like self-control, which is why I would not like, even with like the drinking, right? During the live streams, there's a point where I would stop streaming, or where I would not start streaming even if I had like, for whatever reason, had to have, have to have drunk too much before I start that. Like there's, I want to be in control. I want to know sort of what I say, and I want to be able to remember what I said the next day. So there's there's like limits to that, and I feel, for probably the main reason, this being Germany and beer being so much part of our culture, I feel I have like a pretty good handle on sort of like judging, even while drinking, how I kind of feel while with beer. I definitely lose that when I start, drinking like strong liquor, like all kinds of, like whiskey, vodka, all the different rakias you can get in the Balkans or whatever. Like at that point, I lose like that sense of judgment, that sense of like control that I still have while drinking beer. And I also don't have that when smoking weed. So I would never, go down that route and record or whatever, like fully stoned. I guess I can, I can smoke a joint on camera for like a 20-minute segment of a video, because by the point it really hits, I guess the video is recorded, so we're good. But I don't think it would be like a good idea to do that for like a live stream. Yeah, but see, that's the point, Ben. Right? It's like if you have that control with like weed, then that's fine. It's about knowing what you can do, knowing, understanding what kind of drugs do what to use. Like, and then acting according to that. That's what like being a being a responsible addict means, right? It's like knowing what to do and being professional about it. Yeah, right. Because book shape stocking sounds like a good idea. Yeah, exactly, Joe. That's the one. It's like you need to kind of know what you're getting yourself into, and I mean that's the point, right? Like there is a level of like responsibility when we're doing these things, like doing book to you, but in a lot of ways, like you're putting yourself out there, even if it's only like, I don't know, 30 people watching your video on Ian McDonald. There's still like 30 people on the other side of the globe watching your video. And if you come across as like an absolute idiot because you're stoned out of your mind or you're too drunk or whatever, you lose that sense of control. I feel like a sense of control or like agency, those two things are linked, right? It's like knowing what you're doing and sort of feeling that you're in charge of the response because you know what you're doing. I think that's like the key thing, right? It's like I obviously can't control how people react to my videos, but there's a thing where I can sit back and go like, well, the response is appropriate to what I did, or it's not appropriate. But as soon as I lose control of like my performance in front of the camera, I lose control of that other part as well because I can't anymore. I can no longer say like these people are overreacting or they you know because I lost control and that's yeah, that's something I don't want to go to, I guess. God, it's a cauldron of weed for Obelix. It's bad, man. On the other hand, yeah. I love how Obelix is such like a touchstone for so like a global touchstone, at least like, for like most of like what you might call like the West or like the global North, like America, Canada, whatever, North America and Europe, I guess. Like everyone knows Obelix, even if people haven't, read most of the Asterix comics. Like everyone knows that specific thing of like falling into that cauldron. On the other hand, falling into cauldrons seems to be a very sort of like Celtic thing to do. Maybe not in Ireland, but definitely in Wales, I guess. See, but that's the thing, like knowing my limits is one thing because those are sort of like self-imposed limits and limits I have control over. There's other stuff where I'm like, I hate limits and I'll constantly push at them, but you know, drug use is not one of the limits where I feel like I should, you know, try to extend them, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, once I get my shit together for the conspiracy fiction video, there might be weed smoking on screen for that because like my thought was to actually be a bit more creative and because it has like several like sort of like layers or several like episodes that are like tied to specific time zones, not time zones, but like tied to specific eras. I thought about it would be really cool to record the part about like counterculture influence on conspiracy fiction, conspiracy thought in a lot of ways, and record that in a proper hippie get up and smoking weed for that, and then switch to like the French philosophy part and do that with like the beret and like a turtleneck and smoking the right cigarettes for that one, and we'll see how that goes. I would like to do for like an something that is shaping up to be like another like 90-minute 2-hour video. I would like to have like costume changes and stuff like that to make it more interesting in that regard because I it it's one of those things that I'm struggling with like the booktube things. Like everyone is just like filming in front of the camera and in front of their phone, and I like that because it makes it like incredibly accessible to like anyone who has a phone can be a booktuber, right? But once you're doing a bit more and doing like 90-minute video, I feel like it would be cool to sort of actually use the medium that we're having by using a camera and stuff, like doing more interesting thing, like I don't know, go to different locations, just like mix it up a bit. And I try to do that. I want to do that. On the other hand, I'm incredibly anxious and scared and shy to do that, which I understand sounds weird because obviously I'm in front of a camera and I talk to you all on screen and shit, right? But like, there's a level of sort of like self awareness or whatever, or self consciousness. I think is a better word, a better term there. Like self consciousness that you need to kind of overcome for that kind of stuff, and I'm certainly struggling with that. Also, I'm struggling with the fact that I need to find proper hippie clothes, and the local thrift stores don't have any of that at the moment. So I'm like, where do I get like proper cool bell bottom pants and shit? See, but that's the point. Is like there's a lot of stuff where I have no control whatsoever. But maybe that's part of like the problem of like having a disability like mine. Like being blind means there are situations where I need to have like very, very tight control because the alternative is just like actually probably killing myself. You know what I mean? I need to be I need to make sure that I can, get to places. I need to make sure that I can get back from places. I need to make sure that I can, get all that stuff done. And that takes more sort of like control than I personally would like to have, but it's something that is built in because otherwise, yeah, I probably have died on like a train track or something long ago because I just like walked in the wrong direction or whatever, which means that yeah, there's a it's one of those like things we don't necessarily talk about too much when we're talking about like disabilities, whether it's neurodivergence or physical disabilities or whatever. But those things come with that limitation where you kind of need to take extra steps to make sure that you're okay, that other people don't need to make because yeah, even while sober, I need to make sure that those things are sort of like in order, and that kind of limits what I can do when it comes to losing control. There's a part of me that makes it very difficult to ever fully lose control, I guess, because the risk is like drummed in a way that it isn't necessarily done with like people that don't have like any neurodivergence or physical disabilities or anything of the sorts, I guess. Which kind of sucks, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is a good thing. It may sound like a good thing right now because you know clearly control is a good thing, which is not, but you know what I mean. We will see. Let's see. That's the point, Chad. Yeah, I thought I'll just record that like in the outdoors, in front of like either on like one of the fields or in front of like the trees, like in the forest, and I can totally just like take like a total like put the camera bit further away, so I can just like stand there, lean at the trees, smoke a joint, have I guess like a paisley like bandana hair thing and have like a bell bottom, not necessarily jeans, but like I'd probably go for like the what they call like corduroy or whatever, like the other thing that's not jeans, right? And maybe like a tie-dye kind of thing shirt and see how that goes, and the round sunglasses, John Lennon style sunglasses, and smoke weed and talk about the resistance to the spectacle or whatever. But that's the point, right, Chad? If I get those fucking pants, I'll make sure you see the pants. That's the point. I'll probably have to be barefoot for that one as well, right? Damn. No, it is exhausting. It kind of sucks. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying it's sort of like built in because you kind of have to, you know, you have to deal with that. And I'm fairly good at ignoring it. I'm certainly really good at getting myself into like really dangerous situations and you know being irresponsible. But irresponsibility is something that I had to sort of like learn, I guess, or train myself into in a way that it like a lot of other people I don't think have to do that because it's much easier because there's like an assumption of safety that at least say like white dudes have. I assume that it's if you're a woman there's certainly like levels of like safety precautions that you need to take when it comes to like going home alone at night and shit like that, right? Because this is the world we live in, and if you're say non-white in a majority white country or like racist country or whatever, there's also like situations where you need to be aware of this kind of shit, and then like a disability has the same sort of like level where you have to take extra steps that the baseline assumption person doesn't have to do, and it sucks. Of course, it sucks. I mean that that's kind of the point of. But yeah, I really need to start filming that the conspiracy fiction video. I feel like the other part is like if I want to make that really work, I need to ask someone else to sort of like do the filming, especially for like the outside stuff, because I can't just like film all of that by myself in, setting up the camera and just like sitting in front of the camera. I mean, I did that for the Decameron video where I just like sat down in like a field somewhere. Um, but I don't think I can do that properly if ever I want to have like a wider shot and shit like that. And the problem there is, of course, that I need to have someone to do that for me that I trust enough to actually speak in front of, which is, you know, another one, another thing that I don't know how many booktubers have that problem, how many YouTubers have this. Like, how many people are doing like videos on YouTube and tell like their friends and family about what they're doing? Because the good thing, like the brilliant thing about like the whole booktube or YouTube thing is, right? Like, I can do this. I can talk to all of you, but none of you have ever met me in real life. You're not like my real life friends. I don't have to look you in the face every morning when I, go to the bathroom, like I have to, with my flatmate or whatever, right? So there is that level of sort of like distance that kind of breaks down once you have to do that in front of like friends, and you know having like a friend set up the camera and film that for me means I have to make my statement in front of a friend, like that I have to see every day. So whatever I say will sort of like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but there's a level of insecurity here that is difficult to explain. Because part of like, doing YouTube stuff is like you you try to not come across as insecure, but like I feel like a lot of people on YouTube, at least on BookTube and YouTube in general, are incredibly insecure about a lot of stuff. But you have that like layer of distance there that the screen kind of affords you, and once you actually do that in front of people, it means you lose that like sense of distance, I guess. Hey, Chad, no, I don't have to look out for the cops anymore. Smoking weed is legal in Germany since April 1st. At least as long as I'm more than 1 kilometer away from a playground or school, which, yeah, I can manage that. I really, really don't want to know about those dreams, biggest man. Those must be some fucked up dreams, man. Yeah, right, Ben. It is incredibly annoying, but it's like, and that's like the other part is like if you grow up with that kind of thing, right? Whatever it is, right? It's annoying, but it's also so much part of like who you are that it takes like this like moment of stepping back to recognize that it is annoying, in the sense that like you can like actually verbalize it and like talk about it and formulate like why it is bad, because you know you kind of grow up with the assumption that that's just like how things are, and that's like the really really fucked up thing, right? Not so much for like the disability thing, but it is fucked up as well, but there are like actual physical things. But when it comes to being a woman or being a person of color or whatever, the fact that you have to look out, those are societal problems. Those should not be on you, right? You know what I mean? And and it's still sort of like so deeply drilled in, and I don't know, it kind of drives me mad, makes me angry. No, no, it's so it's Germany, which makes the whole like weed thing interesting. Oh, so sorry. Totally. Um, no, the thing is, Germany's weed legalization is interesting in that it is very German at its core. So what it means is, you're allowed to smoke wherever, except like outside of like a 1 kilometer radius around schools, kindergartens, and playgrounds. Which, yeah, I get it, right? Don't do that. Technically, I would be fine if it would also say don't drink beer, don't drink alcohol, and don't smoke cigarettes in like that vicinity. I'm fine with that, right? Um, the interesting thing where it gets like very German is that when it comes to procuring weed, we go all German, which means you're allowed to grow your own, but only 3 plants per person. So I guess they can send the cops around to count weed plants on your balcony or whatever. So 3 plants per person, or you can join a weed smoking club or association or whatever, and they are allowed to to they are allowed to distribute a certain amount. And I keep forgetting how much it is, like, I don't know, per month, how many grams of weed they can send you per month, because we need to make sure that no one's overdoing it. And the whole idea of like making like legal to have like maximum of 3 plants per person, and or joining a club that makes sure that you don't overbuy or whatever. It's so fucking German in that regard. Yeah, but I mean, like, home growing sounds like the best way ever, right? It's like, uh, one of the benefits of global warming is that I can grow weed on my balcony, and it's going to be really good, I guess. So let me have that one if the planet's going to hell. No, I just like love the idea of like cops going around counting weed plants, and especially like the kind of town I live in is like a very much like a student town. So I have like a lot of like flatmates, and like having like 5 people living in the same flat. So you have to sort of like the cops going like, well, you have 20 plants on your balcony. And it's like, well, there's like 5 people living here. We can still have like five more, 3 more, right? And it also, I got the math wrong, but you know what I mean, right? It's interesting to have that weird sort of like making like these very specific restrictions on like how many plants you're allowed to have. It's like as if anyone needs like 3 plants. Like if they're growing well, you don't need more than three to sort of like deal with it. Especially because like once and I think that's like the part that no one thought through is like, if I'm like out there in the city smoking some weed, right? And the cops go like, and they're like, yeah, shit, that's very much my homegrown stuff. It's like, how are they going to prove that what I'm smoking right now is from those 3 plants on my balcony and not from like a friend or my neighbors or someone I bought it from? It's like they can't prove that anymore. So I don't know. It feels like more like an idea of like trying to sort of appease like the eternal like annoyed people that go like, well, I guess drugs are bad, so we shouldn't do this, and it's going to lead everyone into like instant heroin addiction. So we should stop it right now, which is bad. Ah, so it's just like decriminalized in Belgium. Yeah, that's the point, right? It's like if weed works, why go for like fucking opiates, right? I mean, yeah. Not that I've ever taken any opiates, so I guess I'm good on that on that count. And if I can avoid it, I would never go down the opiate road. The only illegal drug I would love to take would be like LSD or something of that sort. Because I want to find out if I get like really interesting visuals as a blind person. There's like a scientific thing that I'd love to find out. But clearly, I will not do that anytime soon. And even if I would not talk about it on stream, I guess. But I'm just like very interested in like how those kind of things will work with like that sensory issue. Because I'm a curious person at heart. Yeah, anyway, let's move on. It's like, have you guys all watched the dark side of booktube videos? Because I try to not make a video on it, and I feel like maybe I should because there's a thing that that makes me angry. I mean, I find it interesting that everyone is talking about it, and it kind of comes up like every 2 years or something. Um, and it's always missing the point, but like I don't know, go I feel Britain's video was really good, and I'm not saying that just because he mentioned me a lot, and I obviously like that when people mention me a lot. It's something that makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. No, it's a really good video because he points at some interesting things that I feel are important, and a lot of people don't say, but probably feel. And someone like Britain does luckily have that level of honesty or not giving a fuck that allows him to just like say those things, and I really appreciate that. That was really good. Yeah, I feel like see, here's the thing, um, and I'll not go into the MDMA thing. But it's like as I said, like I would like to find out what psychedelic things and like stuff that gives you visuals would do to me in that regard. But I'm too scared to just like go and try it. Because there's no security in there because of like laws and shit, and illegal stuff is unfortunately always you know less secure. But yeah, to move on. Yeah, yes, I watched the one that Theo did, and I think it was pretty good. I watched the one that Matt from Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews did, and I think I watched another one that I keep forgetting which one it was. And I did like Britain's because it's actually not that much about it. It's more about like personal like insecurities and stuff, and I do very much like sympathize and empathize with what he says. I you know if you ever talk to me, you kind of know that I feel the same. So that's certainly something I appreciated. I find it interesting that it kind of became this sort of like weird thing where like, the dark side of booktube. It's like you don't even get a fucking Death Star, motherfuckers. It's not the dark side. Come on, what kind of dark side is that? But like the bad part is that people go do that and then kind of miss the point, which is that a lot of these problems are on the one hand real, but they're also like sort of like systemic, and there's like a lack of empathy from people like Matt. And don't get me wrong, I love Matt from Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews, and I love the fact that he's so sort of like willing to just like don't think like the way he does like book reviews and gods, I've hated some of his book reviews. Like the Conan review was incredibly bad. but like the willingness of just like going out and just like switching off his brain, going like, this is what I think right now, and going. I really appreciate that. There's like a level of freshness there that like a lot of like booktube lacks. Like I appreciate that, and his video was interesting because I think it does showcase something that I found useful. Um, and the same with that Theo's video does showcase something that I find is interesting. I just like, the sad part is because we're booktube and we don't do politics, we don't ever think about like why things might be like that. We either go like, well, this is happening and it's bad, or like, well, if you feel this way, that's a you problem and not like a problem. And yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird. And as I said, I find it interesting that it kind of comes up every like 2 years, and you go back, there's like videos from like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, where people go like, well, is booktube dying? Is booktube destroying my soul? Is booktube doing this and that? I was like, well, yeah, of course it is. I mean, you're a you're a child laborer in the content mines. Of course it's going to destroy you. I mean, you're not literally a child unless you are, but you're certainly not doing exactly. You don't have like union representation. You don't get like minimum wage. You're working the content mines, and it's going to destroy you. I have not watched book talk videos. See, here's the thing though, Ida. I don't like that whole like thinking is not fashionable, because I think it's missing the mark, right? It's like um it goes into this like weird place of pretentiousness where you go like, well, apparently I'm the only person who's still thinking. Everyone else is just like consuming, and next, well, you got to start calling people sheep or whatever, or sheeple, and I don't think that's real. I don't think that's what's happening. Like anyone who has a booktube channel, whatever, anyone who has a channel on YouTube, most people that have a channel on YouTube, most people that have like do book talk channels, right? People read books, people think, people are using their brains. That's not the point. And going like, well, they're not, you know, this is out of fashion. I think, it's it's like teen gothic 90s teen gothic shit. And I hate that. I don't like that. I think it's missing the mark. I think the problem is more that because of where we are and how like we are socialized and how where we live, it's very difficult to move beyond that idea of like everything that happens is like personal responsibility. And the more sort of like successful and embedded in like a positive kind of part of society you are, the harder it is to understand that people not having that level of success might not be personal responsibility. And I think that's closer to it. But going like, someone who thinks that there is no problem is not thinking. I think that's missing the mark there. And the way that thinking is sort of like coded as a positive thing within our society makes that whole like clearly thinking is out of fashion. I know it makes people, it makes you sound arrogant, I guess. And I try to not sound arrogant. It's like one of the things that I my biggest fear, not my biggest fear, like one of my biggest fears is people thinking that I'm arrogant. And it has happened before and it will happen again. I don't know what to do about it, but like a lot of people, like it's the one thing that you want to really fuck me up. It's like, tell me that I came across as arrogant. That's the secret one. That's my kryptonite, I guess. So yeah, I don't like that whole like thinking is out of fashion thing, because it's either those damn kids don't do anything, or it's a, well, I'm special because clearly I think deeply about stuff, and most people who do that don't. Like everyone thinks, they think in different ways, and you know what I mean. I hope you do. Child labor tube. Yeah, who knows? See, I don't know about TikTok because I have not watched TikTok. I don't use TikTok yet. Um, so I don't want to claim anything about it. I'm pretty sure you can make very deep 1 minute videos, like the same way that like Twitter, when it started with like its 140 character limit, kind of forced people to condense thoughts into like a short thing. That stuff does have some advantage. It doesn't necessarily, lead to like great things. Twitter kind of turned into like the bathroom stall wall of the internet, where everyone can just like shit post and make dumb jokes, crude gestures, crude drawings of probably dicks. Um, um, there's a space for that, and I like that. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate that. Um, TikTok might be the same, but like I don't think like length does not equal like depth. And I'm saying that as someone who is like constantly making way too long videos, right? It's like size doesn't matter, at least when it comes to videos. Wait, see, here's the thing, right? Like, I had to go to this thing that, like, the job center. I have to go to. It did. I had to go to the job center thing, and we'll talk about that. It comes back to the job advice, the business advisor thing. Ida, give me a second. All right, we'll get to all of that. So, first of all, like I had to go to this like 1 week thing for from the job center. It was interesting. It was called a assessment of ability to work. The German word is sounds way more fascist and also is more precise because that's Germany. Um, the point is, there were like three tests, supposed tests, where you have like do like a questionnaire for one, and then you have to talk to like a medical doctor and a psychologist, and then they figure out whether you're like able to work like a regular job or not, because it's mostly targeted towards people with like chronic illness and mental health issues and stuff like that. People that can't just like be pushed into the machine again easily. And I made the mistake of mentioning at some point that I do have like a YouTube channel. And they're like, "Well, that's really good. You should do more of that, and also you should start like a TikTok thing because clearly that's working right now." I was like, "You guys, you guys want me to do like a TikTok? The job center wants me to do a TikTok? Come on." Anyway, so there's that. Yes, I agree. Biggest girth is way more important. Anyway, I did not apply for the Harry Potter thing. I kind of forgot about that. Fun thing is, like years ago, when they were like looking for extras for the show Vikings, it was so interesting. They're like, "We're looking for long-haired blonde men who can ride horses, row boats, and swim." And I'm like, I've had like riding lessons for like 10 years. I've done competitive rowing for like 5 years. I know how to swim, right? Unfortunately, I'm blind, but I'd be your perfect guy. And yes, Ida, to go back to that, like, yes, a lot of content is about selling stuff, but I think we can all go and complain about that, and that's understandable because it kind of sucks. But the question is like, why do people feel like they have to make that kind of content to sell stuff? And a lot of that is because A lot of people doing content work on the internet are people in situations that don't necessarily, have other jobs that, get them a lot of money. A lot of people on the internet are, neurodivergent, have disabilities, or all kinds of other situations where they don't have that many other options. And at that point, suddenly the internet, like your content creation thing, becomes your main job, becomes the thing that pays your bills and shit. And that, like, builds up economic pressures that a lot of people kind of don't want to talk about. And I feel that's like one of the things, and I may still make like a video on the whole like YouTube, the dark side of booktube thing, because I feel we kind of missed that point. But people like, say, Matt. Once again, nothing bad again about Matt. I like him. I think he's really cool. About It's really good we have someone like Matt's fantasy book reviews in the booktube sphere, because he does bring like a very specific perspective that a lot of like people like me are unable to bring. Um, but yeah, people like that, people like Mike from Mike's book reviews, even people like Philip Chase or whatever, those are successful people. They have families, they have kids, they have jobs that pay for shit. There's a lot of people out there doing YouTube stuff, doing TikTok stuff that don't have any of that. They're economically desperate, and they need to make that little money. And it's very, very little money when you make, YouTube stuff. Right? Ad money doesn't add up to anything unless you're like really big. Patreon doesn't necessarily, make you rich. None of this makes you rich, but there's an economic pressure for a lot of people trying to do this to sort of kind of get ahead. And blaming people for that, I feel, is missing the point. Because yes, do I want to watch that kind of content? No, I don't. Do I understand why people are trying to make that kind of content? Yes, I do. And I think we need to be sort of more understanding towards that. And I know, attack attack the system that kind of forces people to do that, because I'm pretty sure like very few people just want to make like paid advertisement. Most people who want to do stuff on booktube or like YouTube in general feel like, I believe most people want to express themselves, and they have thoughts and they have ideas. They want to talk about the shit that matters to them. They want to do the cool things. And very often they can't necessarily do that because they have to sort of, get money so they can buy food and shit, and get stuff, pay for the things that they have to. And blaming people for doing that, I think, is missing the point, because there's a system underlying all of that. And yeah, that's part of like the problem that I have with the whole like dark side of booktube. It's like, you don't have to do this. Like, yeah, but what if you have to? Like, what if you, right? Not everyone is happy, has a family, and a full-time job that pays well. Most of us, not well, most of us, like a lot of us don't, and you might want to understand that. Unless you're Steve Donahue, and then who cares? Oh yeah, here's the thing, right? I could have been like a really fun guy on Vikings, but it is what it is. See, that's a fun thing though. Like I went through that whole like job center thing, and like it was like you had these like 3 tests, and then you had like the rest of the week was like a workshop, coaching kind of thing. And there's a lot of things wrong with that. The main thing is, of course, that we live under neoliberalism. So what happened is, of course, the job center pays an external like agency to run that assessment thing for them and run the coaching thing for them, because we need like a small state, and we need small government, and everything else should be done by the market. So someone else gets paid a lot of money to do that, instead of like having just like 3 hours of like appointments with doctors, which I get it. So the rest of it was just like a workshop thing. It was interesting and fun in some places. I felt like I was probably somewhat overqualified, which once again, I don't want to sound arrogant, but like here's the thing, right? At some point the coach brought up when it came to like personal developments of like, have you guys ever heard of the hero's journey? And I'm like, well, here's why you should not listen to Joseph Campbell and this and this and this and this and this. And I'm like, I guess I'm not the target audience, but like, so I sat through all of that. But like the result was that three experts have decided that I'm clearly unemployable when it comes to like a regular full-time job, but I would be perfectly qualified and talented to do um, entertainment, activism, and journalism on a half, on a project-oriented basis. And I'm like, yeah, that's really cool. I guess that means that like the job center is going to pay me unemployment until the end of days, and I'm just going to do like YouTube because like clearly no one's going to pay anyone to do local culture like entertainment stuff and organizing concerts and stuff is not going to pay. Doing activism is not going to pay, and doing journalism it's also not going to pay, right? So yeah, that was like really interesting to see that because like none of the people engaged in that were actually like actively scamming or doing like a bad job or anything, but you can tell that it kind of missed the mark in so many ways. You have that whole like thing, and you have to be there, and then you have like to fill out you have to fill out like a customer satisfaction survey at the end of it. It's like what made you go there to this workshop, and would you recommend this workshop to other people? And I'm like, look, I'm here because the job center told me to go there because otherwise they would cut my unemployment money, right? It's like, and you make me answer a survey that asks me about like why I went there. It's like, what you want, guys? And it's interesting to see how we sort of like how the idea of like having small government and having kind of leads to not having small government, but leads to having the government spent a lot of money on private corporations doing unnecessary bullshit, basically. Even if the people that are actually doing the workshops and so forth are serious and sincere and doing their best or whatever, but it's you know it's not exactly doing the thing that it's supposed to do. It's more like, well, at least the job center is no longer running this itself. We have like actually outsourced it to like the free market. It's like, no, you haven't. What you did is like create a market for people to get more money from the state, which is not how, it's not how Adam Smith imagined that, is it? Oh yeah, like I can do jobs and stuff, and as soon as I earn over like I think it's like 80 euros per month or whatever. As soon as I hit more than 100 euros or whatever, then it kind of gets deducted from the unemployment money. Um, which yeah, no, no, Ida, I don't think it was like that. I think it's more that because of that pressure, they have to sort of like actually do sort of like external contracts in general, and whoever got the contract is like a different thing. But like the idea is that you have to have like external contracts, and you don't get to do it internally. And like seriously, the whole like workshop was unnecessary. It would not like if the goal is to find out whether people with like chronic illnesses are suited to go back to like get jobs, and if so, what kind of jobs they can do or can't do, and figure out if people can like part-time work or full-time jobs, and all of that makes sense. That's kind of what you want to know if you go if you're part of the job center and need to kind of find employment for people. If that part makes a lot of sense, but like having those like three tests in like the first 2 days and then have like 6 hours of like workshop on personality development and shit like afterwards, that part is like if I were the kind of person who wants to, make the government save money, we go like scrap the whole fucking thing, right? Do those three tests and that's it. But the idea is obviously that free market is good, so we'll just like have some fucking agency do that and get rich of it and claim it's really cool and it's capitalism because clearly it's not the state doing it anymore. And like, yeah, but we just created like a thing for like a private corporation to work on. And there's a difference there. I don't think it's like explicit, like deliberate graft. It's more like creating markets that are unnecessary, and then afterwards thinking that that's how private markets work. It's like, no, it's not. No, that's a really good thing. Biggest, I should probably start that. Speaking of kids, so I was helping my sister move yeah, yesterday, and that was really cool. My niece has learned her first word of German, and the word she learned was Katze, which is German for cat, which she is currently using for cats, dogs, horses, and any other like four-legged creature that she can find. But she's very proud of calling anything that has four legs cat at this point. Like, I don't trust my government. I just think that it's mostly just like idiocy and not as sort of like they're not as competent. They're not competent enough to scam this way. Is my point. They're just like way too gormless about it, I guess. But then again, I don't live in the UK, and your country is even more fucked than ours. Is I guess what I'm saying. But yeah, as I said, like my niece is now calling everything a cat, so that's good. Um, I'm pretty sure it's not an Irish flag, biggest. I have no idea what you mean though. That's kind of the point, right? It's like behind the moose, there's my lamp. There's the door to that weird thing that we don't want to talk about, which is under the stairs. And there's like I don't know. There's my backup guitar and some other stuff in there. No, I don't have an Irish flag. The only actual flag I own is a Cuban flag for reasons. Oh yeah, Jerry. Yeah, I thought you might like that. No, she's my niece Zoe is really cute, and she's gonna be like one hell of a monster once she grows up. Like, wait, today's the yeah. Her first birthday is on Monday, so yeah, she's certainly done a lot of stuff in her first year already, and now moved from Israel to Germany, and I'm pretty sure she's gonna like rule the fucking kindergarten in like 2 weeks at this point. She also likes to hit things, which is something I appreciate. Like when she was like at my mother's place, and they brought out like a xylophone that like we had as kids, and she just like grabbed like the sticks for the xylophone, just like hit the same thing again and again and again, and instead of like trying out like different notes or whatever, she's like, "Nah, I'm gonna play drums on this." So yeah, I'm pretty sure cats are going to fear her at some point. Oh, that love letter that you mentioned. Interesting. No, so here's the thing. It's like I obviously I've been a terrible person from like all the way back, and at some point I got myself a Cuban flag. And when I say a Cuban flag, I mean like like full on proper flag, like made out of like the proper flag cloth, the thing you can actually hoist on like a flagpole is my point. And one of my great achievements was using the flagpole at my school to hoist the Cuban flag during like the open door day for the school, and all the parents were there, and I was just like, yeah, let's just like hoist the Cuban flag and see how that one goes. You know, the fun thing is, of course, that it's, it was a school for the blind, so most people didn't realize, so I could get away with it. But you know, you do what you can, I guess. I'll get her first axe. I already got her like her first plush monkey that is not pink and screaming. I'm gonna get her like her first drum kit as soon as I can. Like the good part about like being like an uncle and not like an actual dad is, I guess, you can get your niece and nephews. You can get them all the annoying, noisy toys and just like go away and go like, well, I don't have to deal with the problems. Change of topic and whatnot. Next week, The Sapling Cage by Margaret Killjoy comes out. And if you're into YA trans fantasy, anarchist fantasy, I guess, go check out that book. I'm gonna read it, and I thought I should have mentioned that. Go read some Margaret Killjoy. I think you might like it. If if you keep watching the stuff that I put out, I feel you might actually enjoy that one. Beyond that, there's a new Neil Stephenson novel, and it's like I was thinking about that. It's like when I talked about Snow Crash, and I feel like my video was like relatively, critical, I guess. Um, Obviously, I've read like every Neil Stephenson novel that came out since Snow Crash. I've not read like his first ones, which are like Zodiac and something else that I keep forgetting. Um, and I'm gonna read them at some point. I'm just like, would it make sense for me to actually go back and read some more Neil Stephenson books and talk about them, or is that something that like no one's interested in? Because who on BookTube cares about Neil Stephenson at this point, right? It's like you have like a couple of people that have read Neil Stephenson, but like, is that something that's anyone's interested in? If I don't know, go and reread again, or like make videos about me rereading the Baroque Cycle, for example, or Cryptonomicon, or the Diamond Age, or Seven Eves, or I mean, Anathema is like the one that may pop up on BookTube because a lot of people kind of read it and go like, "Wow, there's this like really smart book about philosophy and stuff," and then they kind of miss the fact that Neil Stephenson's been around forever and done all these other things, and I don't know. It's like just like one of those like open questions. Like, is that something that like anyone would be interested in? The Baroque cycle and me talking about fucking Leibniz and Isaac Newton and how Newton was gay. which is clearly a plot point in the the Baroque cycle, and it's not a negative one. It's just like Isaac Newton was gay, and that's cool. There's also like all kinds of other stuff and pirates and weird weird stuff, and the affair of the poisons, which is one of those really cool things that no one ever talks about when it comes to French history. The affair of the poisons. Um, Go look it up. Um, if you're into like Satanism at the French court in the 17th century, which why wouldn't you? It's really cool. There's people poisoning it. Um, uh, French noble ladies poisoning other French noble ladies because of like romantic rivalries and apparently taking part in black masses and shit. It's really cool. It's really fun, and it makes for like great content, I guess. See, the interesting thing though, Charya, is that the Baroque cycle is stylistically very different from Snow Crash. It's a very different style. It's very clearly like a no, it's a very dedicated, like hardcore, like historical fiction. It's a very dedicated, hardcore historical fiction about mathematics and the beginnings of modern capitalism and economics and shit. But it's very clearly like a different style of writing than say Snow Crash is, and Cryptonomicon is sort of like the bridge between the two, in that it does have some Snow Crashy elements in it, but also does other stuff. Biggest you. that's that's a very bad joke. It's also a deep one. Anyway, no, no, the Baroque cycle is interesting in how it does actually, and that's like one of those things that I try to do. I might try to go there. I was thinking about like doing a video on. Give me a second. It's gonna come back together. I was thinking about doing like another video about Men at Arms by Terry Pratchett, because both Men at Arms by Terry Pratchett, which is a wonderful book, and the Baroque cycle are interesting in that they show are very clear and deliberate examples on how of not on like of how authors do stuff, and how you can use research to do something, on how you can write a book to set scenes and stuff. That are just like very good examples of explaining certain techniques, both in like research and turning research into books, and like using like influences, like visual influences, like movie influences and stuff like that, and turning them into like scene descriptions and stuff like that. And that's something that I'm interested in, and it might be just like useful, I guess, to some people to kind of do that, and go through these things like scene by scene, go like, here's how you can use this specific influence and turn that into a thing that does this and that and so forth, I guess. That's sort of like where I see like a usefulness for talking about these books, beyond just like me really enjoying the Baroque cycle, because it's something I've spent way too much time studying at university because of reasons and stuff. And it's like, yeah, I've read too much Leibniz in my life is my point. And how can I explain that? See you around also. Charlie, yes, Seven Eves is good. Sort of. So I think like the problem with Seven Eves is that it has like two parts. And the first part is really good. And the second part feels kind of tacked on, in that I think it would have been better to have Seven Eves just be the first book, and then either expand the second one and do like a second volume of it, or have it just released as a separate like novella or something. That would have been like better, I think. But in the way that Seven Eves is structured, it feels like the second part is sort of tacked on, and that's unfortunate because the first part is like really cool about like how we can kind of get shit done and do like go into space if we really have to, I guess. Sort of. So yeah, I don't know. As I said, like I enjoyed it. I just think the second part should have been like a separate book or something because yeah, I don't know. I feel like Ream D is really good, which is so funny because Ream D is one of those things that like a lot of people call it Read Me, and the typo is kind of the point of the title. And then like Germany just like translated the German translation is just called Error instead because clearly someone felt insecure about using that title. All right, guys. We're gonna do a quick question, which is, you guys want to hang out some more or not? Because I'm about done with this beer, which means I have to go and get another beer from the fridge and stuff, and that would mean a break. The question is, do you want that, or would you just rather go and do other things and have time on your own and I don't know, read good books, I guess, which is much better than listen to me, I guess. So let me know, and then we'll either just like finish or take a, I don't know, 2 minute break for me to get another beer and stuff. And also, have you guys watched the interview I did with Lavi Tidar? Lavi Tidar. That's I'm gonna try to pronounce it properly. Anyway, have you watched it? Because I was so happy he agreed to do that, and I don't think it was the best thing I've ever done, but I'm just like very proud that he talked to me and we had like an interesting conversation, I think. And even if you haven't read any of his books, which you should, go watch that interview. He's a really cool guy, and he deserves more attention, I guess. All right. If you're here for a bit too, then I'll. We already have like two people. I'm gonna go and get myself a beer, and I'll be back in like 2 minutes. Enjoy yourselves. Ask yourself some interesting questions, and then I'll talk about my desert island disc. Ich gehe jetzt früher streamen, wir trinken vielleicht nachher oder morgen. All right, I'm back, and my flatmate came home from work, so I had to talk to him for a second. Blood Ink Sister Scribe. I've heard about that one. I haven't read it. Is it good though? What is it about? Why do you have to reclaim your computer? Who took your computer, Chadia? Is it your cats? Now you mean book 8 in the first law. That's wait, that's the second one of the second trilogy, right? So that is not the wisdom of crowds, but whatever. The second one in that trilogy, and I keep forgetting which one it was. And that's pretty fun. I'm pretty sure whatever German me and my flatmate speak is not very sexy. I can promise you that one. No. So yeah, like no, the interview with Lavi was really interesting, and I was like very happy. He was like an incredibly relaxed and nice person. So I feel like the end feels sort of like bad in that he goes like, ah, I have to run. I checked the clock, right? And I was like, I was trying to sort of like get it to the end. He's like, oh shit, my kid's coming coming home from school. I gotta end this right now. And it's like, I was already trying to end it at this point, but no. I was really, really happy that I got to talk to him, and I want to do more like author interviews, conversations in the future, in particular with like authors that I feel have something to say that are interesting. And I was like, don't get me wrong, like every author is interesting, and every author has opinions and stuff, and is interesting to talk about. Like I want to talk to authors that I feel have done more or like been around more than just writing fantasy. You know what I mean? It's like, Lavi Tidar is one of those. Ian MacDonald would be another. Elizabeth Hand would be someone I would love to talk to. Um, Obviously, Nicola Griffith last year was someone like that. There is a specific kind of author that I'm drawn to as a reader and a fan in a lot of ways, where I'm like, they're cool people. And I know that shouldn't, determine like how I read their books or whatever and what I read, but like, you know, I like people, I like authors that I can sort of like go like, well, they're actually, they're good people. They're the good guys. And Tidar is certainly one of them, and E. MacDonald would be one of those. And as I said, like, there's a long list of like people I would love to talk to in that regard, because I feel they have something to say that goes beyond just like how they just their specific books, just like on like a general, like how to do art, how to write books, how to engage with the world as an artist, I guess, and how to do stuff. And I think that's just like super interesting, like in that regard. Like, Sylvia Moreno Garcia would be like another one that I think might be interesting in that regard. I just need to read more of her books before I feel comfortable about asking her to come on. But yeah, we'll see. It's certainly something that I want to do more of, because I feel we have, you have like the fanfi addicts podcast thing, doing like author interviews, and we have other podcasts that do like the Code Street podcast and stuff like that, and they're really good, don't get me wrong, but I feel like we don't necessarily have booktubers doing like author interviews in that way. We have like booktubers doing like self-published author interviews, and those are obviously like, they're good. That's the point. Like, but there's this like weird barrier between like booktubers talking to like published authors and having these like more like involved conversations beyond just like a specific book or whatever. And if I can bridge that sort of like gap, that's something I would love to do in the future. I still have to read Sharp Ends. I've never read the short story collection. I kind of fucked up that one. I kind of missed that one. I have. How did you like it, biggest, if you've read it? Chadia, you're really lucky that we're doing this on like in live chat, and you're not like actually a booktuber or anything, because like a book that kills people sounds fun. That's the kind of thing I would clip if I would ever want to, paint you as a bad person. Because yeah, but yeah, no, as I like, I would love to do like more interviews of that sort, and like talk to interesting authors, because I feel like the fantasy and science fiction in general, like literary genre, has like a lot of like really interesting, cool people doing like really interesting, cool shit, and you know, doing that beyond going like, wow, I really loved your new book. Would be interesting. The danger is, of course, that on the other hand, authors are kind of forced to sell the newest book and do that kind of stuff, and be focused on that. And it's like the kind of thing I also had to deal with when I was like more like writing reviews for like music stuff and doing interviews with musicians. And it's like you're talking to like the keyboarder of like Deep Purple, and it's still gonna be like you have like 30 minutes and you're gonna talk about just this one thing, which is like the newest album. And so I'm you know I like the new album, but like, would it be also interesting to talk about all the other stuff? And then obviously the alternative is you talk to Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull, and he just doesn't answer your first question and goes into like a 45-minute rant about like Formula One racing and public transport and all the other things that annoy Ian Anderson. Which brings me back to the thing that I promised to say, which is the disc that I would take to a desert island. And that is probably going to be Thick as a Brick or Heavy Horses by Jethro Tull. And if it's not a Jethro Tull album, it would probably be the first Fotheringay album. Those might like. I mean, obviously, I'm hugely into punk rock and heavy metal and stuff, but when it comes to like something that will sort of like always kind of engage me and keep me coming back and whatnot, it's either Jethro Tull or Fotheringay. Like anything that Sandy Denny was singing on is basically the kind of thing that will always get me back. And of course, Townsend Zant, but like most of his albums kind of have like three songs that really get me engaged, and like another like four songs that kind of annoy me, which is kind of sad. And so what you're saying is I should definitely check out like Sharp Ends because I haven't yet. I should probably. See, that's the other thing. Like, would I love to talk to Marlon James? Hell yeah, but like we're talking about, and it's kind of difficult to explain that because it kind of sounds super, absolutely stupid and shit. But like, I'm too scared to ask someone like Marlon James to come onto my channel. Like, and uh, like, this guy won like a Booker Prize, right? He's a professor of like stuff and of creative writing and whatnot. I feel I feel too stupid and too irrelevant to ever ask that kind of guy to come on my channel. It's like the same thing. It's like another person I would love to talk to is like Nalo Hopkinson, and like I shared the video for that I did for Blackheart Man, and she was like incredibly nice about it and go like said some incredibly complimentary and wonderful things about it. I'm like, I should probably like maybe I should just like message Nala Hopkinson and see if I can get Nala Hopkinson to you know to talk to me. And then I went to her like website and it's like if you want to book Nala for an appearance, he is like her agent to communicate to and stuff like and that's where I'm like, fuck, I'm not gonna do that, right? I'm just scared, which is stupid, right? I know that it's kind of stupid because but beyond like who I am, like we're doing like new media. Like when it comes to like the publishing industry, BookTube is still like new media and shit. Like there's no rules anywhere. I can just like message any fucking author and go like, "Hey, would you like to come on and like hang out and talk?" And they can always say no, and but I don't know. I'm trying to work through that, but I'd love to talk to both. Like, I'd love to talk to Marlon James, man. That would be like brilliant. But I'd love to talk to Nala Hopkinson as well. Like, probably more than Marlon James, I guess. See, biggest. That's why I need those fucking bell bottom pants, man. No, seriously, like like I know I can. There's a lot of like music I could recommend, like, but like if you have never listened to if you've never listened to like a Jethro Tull album before, I mean, maybe don't start with "Thick as a Brick" because it's like one track that was like cut in two because you have like two sides on a vinyl. But like, maybe try "Heavy Horses." "Heavy Horses" is really cool. Also, "The Mouse Police Never Sleeps" is one of the scariest songs ever. Um, Try that one. Also, go and listen to some wonderful like anything that Sandy Denny ever recorded. Go listen to some Father and Gay. Check out the Fairport Convention album she did. Check out some of her solo stuff. One of the most magical voices in folk ever, and yeah, tragic life and the way she passed away. It was a rock and roll death, but it's also rock and roll deaths are never actually cool. They're just like incredibly depressing. and being drunk and falling down your stairs is definitely part of that. But yeah, go check out Sandy Denny. That woman can sing in like ways that are hard to explain. And yeah, I don't know. Go check out some Townsend Zand as well if you have the time. I don't know. Mother the Mountain and the late great Townsend Zand are probably good records too. Check out the kind of guy that makes Johnny Cash sound happy and positive. Is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, if you want like heavy metal recommendation, I can always do those, but that's a different thing. Those are like the kind of thing that are kind of stuck with me, I guess. Yeah, but that's the thing, right, Chunya? It's like we exchanged messages, like not messages, like comments on Blue Sky. That's not actually talking to people, right? And that's trying. I don't know, man. It's stupid. I know it's stupid. I should just like go and message her. So what I usually do in those kind of situations is like I'm gonna write up a nice message and I'm gonna save it somewhere and I put it into my email program. And then I'm gonna have like a couple of beers until I don't care at all, and then I press send because then I can make sure that the actual like email is smart and doesn't sound too bad and whatnot. But when I'm able to write that kind of text, I'm not able to actually press send, which is stupid, right? Anyway, Ida, I am incredibly excited, and it's also available as pre-order for on an audio. And I have not yet pre-ordered it, but I'm going to do that as soon as I have like the next Audible credit, like free to spend, which will probably be in I don't know 3 or 4 days, I guess. End of the month is what I'm saying because I have like an Audible credit on like the 29th or 30th or something like that. And I'm very excited about it. Yeah, I'm very excited about it. Is what I'm saying. It's gonna be really cool, and it's going back to 7 cities, and that's going to be cool. So we're gonna talk about the Coltane cult, I guess. The audio is coming out in July or August next year, so it's like a long way away. But of course, I'm fucking excited about it. Yeah, I said like seriously, like next couple of weeks, I don't know, go check out the Sapling Cage. Like seriously, Margaret Killjoy, trans woman, anarchist, YA fantasy about a trans girl becoming a witch because only girls can become witches. It sounds like the kind of thing that I really love. So I'm really excited. I'm going to sell out. I'm gonna become a grind tuber. I'm gonna do YA fantasy now. Just ignore all the anarchism, I guess. So no, it's coming out on Tuesday, and I'm like really excited about that one. So yeah, I don't know. Check out the Sapling Cage. I've heard it has a lot of like spear fighting. So if you're into spear fighting, go check out the Sapling Cage. No, I'm not paid for any of this because no one has money. But anyway, I'm really excited about that kind of shit. And beyond that, like the rest of the year, I'm gonna read The Fury of the Gods, which is the third one of the Bloodsworn trilogy, and I'm like, I'm not sure if I should make a video because I made a video on the first one and the second one, and you know, I've heard that some people say that they're really big fans of John Gwynne and think that it's the best thing since the Volsunger saga or whatever. At least it's very saga related, which I think is not true, but I didn't study English language, so I will never disagree with those kind of booktubers. Also, they have like 40,000 subscribers, so who am I? Anyway, point is, I think it's going to suck for the same reasons that the first two books sucked, because John Gwynne just isn't very good. So I'm debating whether so I'm gonna read it because I'm really bad about like not finishing shit, but I'm not sure if I want to talk about it in a video, because I feel like unless there's something really new in there, I've said it all. I think it's, it's action filled with like references from like reenactment to establish authority, and the rest is just like fan service and telegraphing every plot point, like, I don't know, 3 chapters in advance, and make everyone feel happy. And I know why that's successful. I just don't think it's like necessarily like interesting. So I don't know what to do about that. And there's a bunch of these kind of books coming out later this year where I'm like, I'm gonna read them. Should I talk about them? I don't know. Bent, I will get to the tales of Beauchelin and Corbelbroach. At some point, I have access to the audiobooks, is what I'm saying. Or at least I hope I still have access, because I had access to them before my computer broke, and then my computer broke, and I need to figure out if I still have access to them. It's something I'll have to figure out. And then I'm going to talk about them in detail, and I'll be, I'll be me, and I'll talk about him in detail. And I'll be very excited, and drop Faffer and Grey Mouser references and shit. Well, look, Chadia, if you think about Orca as like a whale just like throwing around axes, you might have more fun with it, because it makes more sense than the rest of it. Now, it's seriously, John Gwynne is good at like putting words together, don't get me wrong. He's really bad at using more than like 10 words, because he's using the same words all the time. He's signaling, his like competence by using, you know, not using sword, but going like CX. I'm like, yeah, I get it. And it's all about fucking binding, which is binding is not knitting. It looks like knitting, but it's more like crocheting. And here's your like reenactment historical reference if you need it. But he needs to make sure that like everyone is wearing a knob-bending cap, and I'm like, fuck you, motherfucker! No one cares. No one fucking cares. But you've named your main guy Varg, so clearly he's not going to be a werewolf, is he? Though, of course he is. I'm like, it's so fucking bad in that regard. It just like pushes like everything is like telegraphed in the way that, it's not just like someone making a small hint with like a fucking flashlight. No, this is like full on flashlights, full on fucking stadium-sized flashlights signaling, telegraphing the plot developments. And it pisses me off that people that pretend to be smart, and that I know to be smart, that have like educations in that kind of field, that have like fucking PhDs in English literature, go like, this is so good. It's like, no, it's not. It's not fucking good. It's entertaining, but it's shit. It's fucking shit. And you should be able to say that, Philip Chase. Fuck you. Anyway, no, I mean, obviously, he's never going to ask me for a collaboration anyway. So, anyway, we're done. Point is, it just annoys me that people go like, clearly John Gwynne is a nice guy, and I from all I've seen, he's a nice guy. Those books are not good, and we should be able to differentiate between someone being a nice guy and someone writing good books. Oh, and clearly we are not, and it kind of pisses me off because, yeah, I don't know. It just, I don't know. It annoys me because Fury, like the whole Bloodsworn saga, is not that good. It's entertaining. It's not the worst thing I've ever read, but it's clearly so far away from actually being like the best thing I've ever read. It's far away from being good. It's not even that well written. It's not like like language wise, it's not interesting. It's not doing anything interesting in any way. It's just like having long, boring descriptions of fight scenes that are interesting to anyone who's ever done like actual reenactment fight. And going like, wow, he's actually using a shield wall in a way that makes more sense than Bernard Cornwell's does. Which, yeah, good on you. But if that's our fucking threshold, we're kind of fucked, and fantasy should just like stop existing, doesn't it? Right? Sorry, no, no, these are definitely they have alcohol. I'm sorry, no, but like seriously, we can have that same conversation with me just drinking beer, and I will still have the same opinion. I might not. No, once again, like Philip is sweet, and I love Philip. He's a super nice guy. I will probably not do a video on the way of Idan, even though it may be coming out in audio any day now. But I don't want to do that kind of video about someone that I've, have interacted with before. And unless unless I get really angry, which might happen. But to get it back, right? The thing is, yes, I agree, Chadia. It feels like an action movie, but it lacks Bruce Willis. That's the point. There's no John McClane. Orca is not John McClane. Fucking Varg is not John McClane. No one's wearing like a fucking undershirt and walking barefoot about around glass over glass. It's just like I don't know. It just doesn't work, and I think the problem with the book like the Bloodsworn Saga and why it is so successful is that it has very fake conflicts that can always be solved by violence, and there's no actual like emotional cost to anything really, because yes, there is some emotional cost, and yes, Orca's husband and whatever her kid's name is, dad dies and shit, and then you find out, and okay, I'm not gonna go there, but there's like all this stuff happening, but those are not actual emotional costs. Those are like cookie cutter costs, right? It's like it just like deals in stereotypes. Nothing in those books is actually, ever getting down to like a human level where shit is like messy and complicated and stuff. It doesn't ever go there. So like reading it can be the kind of escapism that you want to that you want to do, because you know, good guys be good, bad guys be bad, and even betrayals are semaphore like chapters ahead, so you kind of know what's going on. It leads to like a simpler world where everything works. And the problem that I have is that that specific form of simpler world is It's a terrible world. It's like fucked up because it doesn't reflect like any form of like human, messiness that we all have. So people who think that that's a good place and try to turn our way world into that kind of good place will certainly become, not to put a finer point on it, fascists, I guess. And it's frustrating because clearly John Gwynne knows, understands what people kind of want and kind of need, but he doesn't actually go that next logical step of going like, well, humans want human shit, but that means you have to be kind of human. But we're gonna instead he goes like, let's reduce it all to uh, you know the found family where everyone is like happy together because they're like the odd ones out, and everyone is cool because now they're fighting the bad guy. It's so fucked up. I don't know. It just like pisses me off. First of all, welcome here. I'm currently being incredibly angry about John Gwynne's the Bloodsworn saga, and why I think it's not as good as people think it is. I hope that clears it up. Otherwise, please ask, and I'll try to explain. But like, first of all, welcome. Thank you for showing up. We appreciate that. I appreciate that. See, I haven't read The Faithful and the Fallen because, for reasons that we don't want to know about, Audible has region restricted the first three books, and I can get the fourth one. I can get like the series after that if I wanted to. But yeah, I only read the Bloodsworn saga, and I'm like, I don't know if this is like what John Gwynne is, doing now. I'm like, I don't want to try the rest. The thing is, there's so much interesting shit happening in fantasy and science fiction, and the weird places between fiction and shit. And people go back to something like John Gwynne, and don't get me wrong, right? Like if you're entertained by it, and I was entertained by both Fury of the Gods and no, the Fury of the Gods, like Hunger of the Gods, and the first one, which I keep forgetting, the other of the Gods thing, right? And I was entertained. I was, taken out by all the null bending shit because yeah, fuck it. But that's like a personal thing that maybe because I know too many people who do like Viking reenactment, and I've heard too many people talk about null bending before. And anyway, my point is that's fine, but someone you know who's mentioning the fact that they are like a professor of English language and whatnot, claiming this is like the closest you can get to the sagas and shit. Like that's betraying trust, man. And that's bad. It's like don't get me wrong, like you can fucking love those books, and I'm fine with that, right? But as soon as you go like me as an English professor, I think it's the closest like fiction thing I've seen to like the Norse sagas. That's when you're fucking that's when you're fucking putting like your authority on the line, and that's where I start to have problems because that's where I can start to put on levers to actually argue. Because I will never talk about like your taste and whatnot. Like enjoy it, go nuts. Go read all the fucking dinosaur porn that Chuck Tingle ever wrote, and I will never judge you for it. I mean, obviously, it's really good, but I will never judge you for that. But like, go like, as someone with this background, I say this is this. That's that's why you need to sort of like do something, and someone is not doing that. No one is doing that, and that's kind of fucking annoying. Charlie, I have not decided what to do next. So my clever plan was to read because, like, I'm gonna do the video for Scissors Cut Paper Wrap Stone tomorrow, and on Monday I'm gonna do the next navel gazing video. So I have some time, right? So I'm gonna read Sacrifice of Fools. I'm gonna read um chaga, which is sometimes called Evolution's Shore in the US. And I'm going to decide after I've read both of them which one to do first, right? That's sort of where I'm going with this. So I'm going to go. I feel like it makes more sense to take Sacrifice of Fools. Because, I think it makes sense to do Sacrifice of Fools before I do Chaga. Sacrifice of Fools starts really strong. It's like the most Northern Irish novel ever. It starts with like a bunch of people, you know, setting out to shoot up a sports pub, and they're dressed in different fans stuff, which is Liverpool, Manchester, and I keep forgetting the other one, but they dress as football fans, and everyone has like guns in their sports bags, and they're driving to the pub, and then the other side, in this case, being the Protestant kind of part of it, already being there, and it kind of turns into like a full on shootout. It's a very Northern Irish novel in that regard, and I think it makes sense to actually do that one after Scissors Cut Paper Wrap Stone, because it kind of goes back to the things that he's kind of talking about in Broken Land. And then I can move on to Chaga and Kirinya and do those in like one go before we move on to River of Gods. Um, Aditya, yes. So here's the deal, right? I think so. How it happened was that I was talking about thinking about doing like a monthly live stream thing, and I wanted to do something with like alliterations because I kind of like them. And biggest bad said, "You're not a content creator; you're a malcontent creator." And since I was reading Marx at the time, I figured it was like that's kind of where it comes from. It was like I would never call myself like a full-on Marxist. I've read a lot of Marx. I've read a lot of like other Marxist authors. I'm certainly further out on the anarchist sort of spectrum when it comes to that. But that's like where the malcontent comes from, is like a wordplay on content versus malcontent, because I'm usually very angry. So that's where it comes from. I hope this explains it. But if you have like further questions, like please ask them. I'm always willing to do that, to explain that. Perfect. Thank you. I hope I hope that makes sense. Yes, that's kind of where it came from, and I'm always willing to go into like more political and economic kind of stuff on the fly, but mostly we're talking about books. It just like kind of happens to be from like a sort of anarchist, leftist, whatever perspective. And as I said, like I've certainly read a lot of like Marx and Marxist theory and books and authors over the years, and that does inform how I, view the world and talk about stuff. Ooh, the Luna series. Yeah, I'm going to get there at some point, Shadia. Um, have you read "The Moon Is a Harsh Mistress" by Heinlein, Robert A. Heinlein? Because Luna is kind of sort of a response to that. It's also a lot of other things, and I know it's everyone calls it like the publisher marketed it as like Game of Thrones in space, which is also true. But it's very, very deliberately sort of like taking the Robert A. Heinlein 1960s libertarian economic libertarianism that informed "The Moon Is a Harsh Mistress" and you know responding to that because clearly Ian MacDonald is not exactly a Ayn Rand style libertarian. But yeah, I mean, any Ian MacDonald book is always worth reading because I said that before, right? He's just like he's got shit to say, and that's kind of the thing that like makes people like Ian MacDonald interesting, people like Lavi Tidar interesting, people like Stephen Erickson interesting, and some other authors as well. It's like they are people that have lived, that have been around, that have traveled, that have like lived for like interesting lives, and that stuff informs what they're writing about. Whereas someone who's like just like stayed at their home their entire life and never, they can do fantasy. Don't get me wrong, but there's a level of like intensity that kind of never gets there, and McDonald certainly has that, and you can see that like you can see that even in like the Luna trilogy. I feel like so the Moon Is a Harsh Mistress is probably one of the best Robert A. Heinlein novels, or at least one of the most readable ones. And the way it does things, the way it talks about stuff, the way it talks about like the moon is sort of very progressive in some regards, very bad in some other regards, and it's like just like interesting as a document of its time because it kind of shows that very specific, weird, progressive libertarianism that some people in the sci-fi spectrum did in like were sort of like a part of in like the 1950s and 1960s, and I think it's interesting in that regard, and it's certainly like I said like one of the best Heinlein novels because you know it doesn't actually go off on like too many tangents, and the plot kind of makes sense, and that's pretty good for Heinlein compared to some other novels, but so it it is a response to that, but it also goes like way other places with like Luna, and I think it's it's good. No, no, like I'm into both, right? Like I read a lot of like fiction, but I also read like a lot of theory and stuff. I just don't think there's like a meaningful difference because I feel like fiction is informed by the things that that authors believe, and even people that think of themselves as unpolitical are of course political creatures because if you engage in, life in society, you are a political creature. And even if you just like go with the what you might call the status quo or whatever, you're a political person. You're perpetuating that specific form of political system and so forth. So I think it makes sense to read both, right? And I sort of like, switch between both. And I think my reading of stuff like, I don't know, authors like Nancy Fraser and David Graeber, and obviously Marx and and so forth, right, informs how I read fiction. And on the other hand, I feel like fiction authors reading people like, Graeber, like I know Stephen Erickson has been a fan, not a fan, but like certainly someone who has pushed David Graeber's writings before. And people going like Nancy Fraser and I'm blanking on the name right now. Oh fuck, I'm really bad. David, a different David, who wrote 17 Contradictions and the End of Capitalism, and he's done like some public lectures on Capital by Marx and stuff like genre fiction authors are reading these kind of like non-fiction authors. I think it's important to sort of like have both things in mind if you want to, understand how science fiction or genre fiction or fiction in general does actually serve like a political end in a lot of ways. And some of the key texts of like genre fiction, like fiction analysis, when it comes to sort of like the academic level, right, have been Marxist and have been very political in a lot of ways. Fantasy as the literature of the subversion is a Marxist text in, well, in most ways. It's a feminist Marxist text, but still, you know. So I feel like having a political sort of background and reading political texts does inform how I read fiction texts. I hope that makes sense. That's the one. Yes, thank you, Ida. David Harvey. That's the one. He's so good. Um, Certainly, like if you want to read like Marx, Capital, go check out David Harvey's lectures he did. Like they're all online, and you have like all like the notes and stuff. They're all online. Check out David Harvey's entire like semester, like 12 or whatever lectures per volume of Capital. I can highly recommend that. Hey, Britton, how are you doing? We're talking about Marx and Marxists. I feel you might enjoy that. So yeah, and that's kind of the point. Is like I feel one of those annoying parts of like fantasy and science fiction booktube, and not only booktube, like general like discourse, is people going like, let's keep politics out of it. And I know like even Labi Didar spoke about that as like he was doing politics in like his science fiction, and people got annoyed, and now he's doing like literary fiction because there he can do politics and people are not complaining about it. It's like science fiction has always been political. It's always been there, right? It's like fucking Starship Troopers is not, you know, a non-political novel, and stuff has always been there. And to just like be sort of like aware of what you're doing, I feel is important. But that's that. But at the end of the day, I feel like doing both, I think, helps me in what I do and where I'm going in those kind of things. And when you read like academic texts, they always come from like a very specific political backgrounds, and they're not, you know, not all of those are, you know, leftist or Marxist or whatever. But when you do like theory and when you do like academic reading in any way, like whether it's like English literature or philosophy or whatever, those are political. There's a political like dimension to that, and the willingness or like the need of a lot of like genre fiction discourse to deny that, I think is troubling, because like it's fine if you love something that disagrees with your political values. That's, you know, it's just like life. We have to live with that. But to go like it doesn't exist is a very different thing. And I don't know why it is there. And it feels incredibly childish in a lot of ways. It's one of those like I don't see it like closing my eyes and then I kind of it doesn't exist, and I don't know. It's bad. E- you might be right, Chadia. I'm just not sure because I've see. Here's the other thing. It's like growing up in Germany and certainly being sort of like on the politically less pro-capitalist side of things, right? I'm trying to be careful here with what I'm saying. Um, there's a level of anti-Americanism that is incredibly ingrained with a lot of that, and I'm wary of that because it's easy to kind of go down that road and then sort of buy into all kinds of like wrong bullshit. Um, but yeah, I don't know if we're like if it's easier to talk about like political opinions in or like be openly leftist in Europe than it is in the US. I don't know about that. I think the fact that like our sort of like political compass is different from like like a US political compass, I think is definitely part of it, right? It's like you want to call yourself like a leftist in Germany, that means a very different thing from like calling yourself a leftist in the US, right? And that's sort of like where things get interesting. Where I'm like, the Democrats for me are like what I would call like sort of like at the same level as the Christian Democrats in Germany, which I would call, you know, neoliberal right wing conservatives. And that's what you call left in the what some people call like the left in the US. Now, obviously, the further like political spectrum is way broader, obviously, but like when it comes to like the electoral politics, that's kind of where we are, right? It's like if your left option is my right, the most right I would ever call go as a democratic party, we kind of have like a problem when it comes to that conversation, I guess. Biggest motherfucker making a fucking clown shoe joke. I salute you. Um, Uh, the main thing that I have no comment on the British politics thing is like, Ida, was the dress actually worth it though? That's the question, right? And it's like I don't know how to judge that. Clownist, yeah. Well, I mean, to preempt the thing that that came out at the end of the conversation I had with Lavi Didar, read more books about clowns. Go read The Escapement by Lavi Didar, which is a western about clowns, which has nothing to do with Stephen King, even though it kind of ticks both of like Stephen King's major sort of boxes. Go read it and have fun with a story about clowns in the Wild West, the Weird West, the Clown West. Sharia, you're right. It's fucking midnight. Yes, Britain. I'm aware of that. It was that my camera was bad, and I've cleaned it since. Anyway, Charia, good night, and yes, it's fucking midnight. We should probably slowly wind down, I guess. Anyway, um, I really appreciate everyone coming out to hang out with me. All of you, 8 people, 9 people, whatever. Anyway, I really appreciate that, and yeah, there'll be like an Ian McDonald video next tomorrow, and there'll be stuff happening next week, and I don't know about like next weekend because I'll be at a festival from like Thursday on to help build up the stage and stuff. I'm not just like there as a like audience. I'm there as sort of like a worker, sort of like I'm doing shit. Is my point. So we'll see how that goes. Point is, I'll try to get some videos out before that. I'll try to pre-record stuff, and we'll definitely talk about the sapling cage. Promise, of course, the new Neil Stevenson's novel, Polostan, which comes out on Thursday, will probably have to move into next week because if I read it on Thursday, I'll still have to also be at the festival on Thursday, so it's gonna happen. Um, but until then, I don't know. Read the sapling cage. Do some anarchist shit. Like be smart. Read some anarchist fiction, which has like lots of spears or so I've been told. So what could possibly go wrong, right? Anyway, so thank you everyone for actually showing up. I'm gonna figure out how to finish the thing. Here we go. I found the button. All right, anyone, thanks everyone for actually showing up. I'll see you around for something hopefully more entertaining than this one. And yeah, see you around and cheers.